All that's left in the world is a young adult queer romance set in an apocalyptic world, and what a treat it was to read. So I've got to be honest, when I saw this in the shop, I was attracted to the cover, and yes, it was £3, so that was also part of the reason why I got it, but I'm so glad I did. The book's tagline is "Find shelter, find safety, find each other," and that's basically what this book's about. It's set in a post-COVID world, which we did survive, but then another pandemic shook the world, which more or less killed off the whole population of the Earth. What's left is a lawless place, where people are forced to do unthinkable things in order to just survive. Our two main characters are Andrew and Jamie, who are complete strangers at the start of this book. Andrew is travelling down the US East Coast, but unfortunately gets injured. He stumbles across what he thinks is an empty cabin, but inside he actually finds Jamie pointing a shotgun at his face. Despite this rocky start, they do become firm friends as the book goes on. At the start of the book, there's this map of the East Coast, which does kind of reveal where they end up at the end, but it doesn't tell you how or why, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. As you can see, they more or less traverse the whole coast, and along the way they meet a bunch of people and find themselves in some pretty sticky situations. I think the author crafted a superb couple of characters to go on this journey, with their personalities perfectly suited to make for an interesting read. The book is written in dual point of view, with both points of view being in first person. This allows for us to really get into their heads and understand what they're thinking. Whilst the prose and the writing style is more or less the same, you can tell who's who because they both have different personalities. And just to note, although the book refers to him as Jameson, he actually tells Andrew to call him Jamie, so that's what I'm going to call him too. As I mentioned before, at the start of the book Andrew has an injury, and he has to rely on Jamie whilst he recovers. So even though he's in this perilous situation, where he literally has to trust a stranger with his life, he's still cracking jokes. He also can't help how attractive he finds Jamie, although deep down, he thinks this will never be reciprocated, as Jamie is a typical straight boy. Andrew also strikes me as the more confident of the two, as he's usually the one to strike up conversation and initiate social interactions. But hidden underneath this extroversion and dry humour, he also has a vulnerable side. Due to unfortunate events in the past, Andrew is grappling with his conscience. Jamie's presence and support is helping him get over it, but this does mean he greatly fears losing him, and he'll be left all alone in the world again. Jamie does share some of those fears, but not to the same degree. I'd say he's more of a doer rather than a thinker. He's the practical one of the two, and likes to plan ahead. Physically, he's also taller and wider. At the beginning, Jamie is quite withdrawn, but we start to see him come out of his shell as the book goes on. He definitely develops as a person. We also start to see some of his dry humour, which almost matches Andrew's level, but not quite. Whilst the tone of the book is quite light-hearted in general, this is of course set during a pandemic, so there are a variety of scenes which create tension and drive the story forward. I thought the pacing of this book was excellent, and the rate at which it progressed felt natural. One minute the characters might be experiencing an absolute high, but over the next few pages, all could change, and they might find themselves running for their lives. I'm going to talk about the writing style now. So young adult is not normally a genre I gravitate towards, so I've got nothing to compare this to. But I will say this just felt very adult, like apart from the characters' ages, nothing would suggest that this is young adult to me. And that's maybe because we've got two believable characters facing very adult problems. You could say that there are hints that these characters are teenagers, such as their frequent moments of weakness and their naivety. But I also feel like these would be totally relatable to adults too. I think what I'm trying to say is, even though this is a young adult novel, it doesn't feel particularly juvenile. At the heart of it is just great storytelling, and what more could you want from a book? You might have noticed that I haven't mentioned the storyline at all, and that's been on purpose, because it's quite difficult to talk about it without giving too much away. But what I will say is, this is a journey of discovery, both in a physical sense and in an emotional sense. I love seeing how these two young characters dealt with difficult situations, and when faced with moral dilemmas, how they were forced to mature. By the time I finished this book, I was kinda sad to see them go. I'm so happy they got the ending they deserved.